Grief, it walks into your life without even asking permission. Sometimes it just shows up, it sits beside you in silence and changes the way every room feels forever. But love keeps whispering that the memories were worth the pain. There are mornings where the weight of loss feels impossible to carry, where even getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. Yet, somehow the love you shared becomes the quiet force pulling you forward. And the hardest part about losing someone is realizing the world keeps moving while a part of your own world has completely stopped. But love refuses to let their existence disappear with time. Like those people that you love, they're going to be with you pretty much forever. And, sometimes grief can feel like standing in the rain or, having nowhere to hide. But, the love that you shared with that person and the warmth that you had with them, that reminds you that you're still alive beneath the storm. People often think healing means forgetting, but real healing, it's just learning how to carry someone in your heart without collapsing under the weight of missing them every day. And there are songs you can never hear the same way again because love attached memories to melodies. And now grief turns every lyric into a doorway back in time. And grief teaches you how fragile life truly is, but love teaches you why life is still beautiful even after something precious has been taken away. The empty chair at the table hurts because love once filled that space with laughter, stories, and a presence that made life feel complete. I remember looking at the chair of my grandma when she passed away, and it was... I could almost envision her still sitting there. It was weird. Almost like a ghost, but not quite a ghost. You just have to see it to really understand what I'm talking about. But, some nights you replay old conversations in your mind because grief is terrified of forgetting even the smallest details about the people you loved most. Love leaves fingerprints on the soul, and grief is what happens when your heart keeps reaching for someone who is no longer physically there. The truth is that grief never fully disappears. It just kind of changes shape over time. But, love keeps giving you the strength to survive each version of it. And, there's many different stages to grief, and that's just all a part of the process of existence. And, there are moments where the pain hits out of nowhere. In grocery stores, during sunsets, while hearing a familiar laugh. Because grief hides inside ordinary moments. And, love is stronger because even death cannot erase the impact someone had on your spirit, your personality, and the way you see the world forever. Sometimes the people we lose continue living through our habits, our words, our humor, and the lessons they unknowingly carved into our lives. And, pieces of those people will remain with us forever. And, the lessons that we learned while coexisting alongside them and stuff like that. But yeah, like grief in general can make the future feel empty. But love reminds you that the past was real, meaningful, and powerful enough to shape who you became. The reason loss hurts so deeply is because love was once so strong, and the pain itself becomes proof that something else beautiful existed. And you start to realize that healing is not about moving on, but about learning how to move forward while carrying love with you instead of fighting the memories. Some people leave this earth far too soon, but love stretches beyond time and keeps their presence alive in invisible ways every single day. And there are tears that come from pain, but there are also tears that come from gratitude because you were lucky enough to love someone deeply in the first place. And grief can isolate you from the world, making you feel misunderstood and distant, but love still connects you to everyone who ever experienced loss. You all have gone through that thing together, and, that's a beautiful thing. The people we love, they shape our inner world forever. And even after they're gone, their voice still echoes through our decisions and our hearts. Sometimes you smile when remembering someone and immediately begin crying afterwards, because grief and love often exist together in the same exact moment. And, love is stronger because it outlives physical presence, surviving through memories, stories, traditions, photographs, and the invisible bond that never truly breaks. And, that bond is going to be with you for life, forever. Every day you take a walk, or every day you see that beautiful sunset, or every day that you spend time with the people that are still there, you guys will remember that person, and when you see pictures of them and stuff like that, it'll come back to you, and you'll remember that, through life you shared such a beautiful thing, and that is the bond that you have and the love that you have for each other. And grief teaches patience because some wounds cannot be rushed, and some hearts, need years before they learn how to breathe normally again. And there will always be anniversaries, birthdays, and random dates that reopen old pain. But love turns those painful moments into reminders that someone mattered deeply. And the world often pressures people to be okay too quickly, but grief does not follow schedules. And love cannot simply be switched off like a light. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones quietly carrying unbearable pain while still choosing kindness, compassion, and love every single day. Love is stronger because even after heartbreak, people continue opening their hearts again despite knowing how devastating loss can eventually become. But we get through it, and we remain bonded to those people for all of eternity. And that's pretty much all I got for this video, but I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.